Hello and welcome back. In this section, we are going to be working on how to create a dynamic data. Now, creating dynamic data is one of the core uses of PHP when creating web applications with PHP. Using the dynamic data is one of the core features that we have in PHP. Now, what really is this dynamic data? For instance, you have a file, you create a file, and you have a particular data passed into that file that you created, and you have 10 different pages, okay, or 10 different files that you want created. Then that's first file that you opened, you created, you want that data that you passed in there on the 10 different pages. Now, for you to be able to do that without having to copy and paste that data on the 10 different pages, that is when you have to introduce the usefulness of creating a dynamic data. So when you're using dynamic data, you don't need to copy and paste the particular data you have on one file on the 10 different pages. You don't need to do that. All what you just need to do is to maybe create a variable and pass in the data there and call it on the 10 different pages that you want that data to reflect on. Now, let's not bore you so much and let's go into practical. Now, I'm going to create a file called dynamic underscore text.php. Alright, so that's a PHP file. Now I'm going to create use the shift and 1. You're going to have this, then click on it. It's going to bring out the HTML declarations we have here. So let's just put h1. Let's create an h1, and we have David is creating a web application. Alright, let's close this up here. H1. Alright, now we have this data right here. Obviously, if we check this data on the browser, what we're going to do here is let's take this and let's slash dynamic underscore text.php. Alright, so we have this here. Alright, now let's move on. We want to creating the dynamic data, and we want this particular data to be passed into different files. What we just need to do is that we're going to create a PHP. Let's create a PHP syntax here. And what the next thing we're going to do here is to declare a variable. Okay, after the section, I'm going to be showing you what this variable is all about. Now I'm going to copy what I have here. Okay, let's just cut it out and pass in the data right inside this string I have here. Okay, so just put a semicolon at the end. Now what I'm going to do is that I'm going to output the results of this data right inside this particular HTML element. So I'm going to output this. Okay, so we have the name, we have the value, we pass in the data which we had inside this h1, we pass it inside this variable, okay, as the value of the variable. So I'm just going to come here and let's say we have just put a PHP syntax right inside there, and we're going to put the echo the name variable. Alright, so we're going to echo the name variable. So with this, we have successfully created a dynamic data. Now with this, we can pass in this particular PHP function on every other this PHP. We can pass in this PHP function on every of those 10 pages. All what you just need to do is to wrap this up in a PHP file, in a function, and create and call it on the 10 different pages, and you are good to go. It's going to be reflected on them. So the bottom line is that you don't have to copy and paste the data we have here on the 10 different pages. Okay, what you just need to do is to take include one file to another file and pass in this particular function right there. So let's just do something, practicalize that. So we just have example.php. So I'm just gonna do that. So shift 1, okay, or better still, let's not use the shift, let's just use the PHP syntax, and yeah, we're gonna use the include function. All right, so we include dynamic underscore text dot php, and put a semicolon right there. All right, then next you are going to do here, we're going to have this. Okay, let's just put this here. All right, come down it here and put the HTML we have there. Then we put h1, put down h1. So we create a PHP syntax right there, then echo name. All right, so I will close the h1 right there. All right, with this I'm gonna show you what we're actually doing here. So example.php, what we have on the dynamic text.php, David is creating a web application which is gonna be dynamically displayed on example.php. Now let's check that out. Okay, so I'm just going to change this to PHP. Okay, so what do we have here? You see, in example.php we have David is creating a web application, and right here on this dynamic text.php we still have that displayed right there. So if we say, okay, let me show you, okay, let's try to change the text. Let's say David is creating a web, David is a web developer. Okay, so let's go back there and reload. Okay, so we have David is a web developer. Now let's change this again. You see, what we have here is David is a web developer also. Now we don't need to actually come down here and change any of those things here. Okay, we don't need to do that. All what we need to do is to include this page and include it and pass in what we have right there. Okay, just pass this, even without passing this, even without passing the PHP, passing it on the h1 element here, it still displays what we have there. Okay, let's try removing this. Okay, it still displays what the data is seen from the first file. So that's just it about that in PHP, how to create a dynamic data with PHP. Alright, I hope you have a good understanding. So we have this dynamically displayed on different pages, so you can create as much as pages as you want, and include what we have right here on this first file, that's the dynamic text.php, include it on those different texts, and whatsoever that we have right here is going to be reflecting on those 10 remaining pages. So whatever you change here is going to be changed on those pages. So that's just how to create a dynamic data using PHP. Alright, I hope you have the good understanding about that, and I'll see you in our next session. Bye for now.